are back again with another interesting live session wherein I and my colleague Shashi are going to discuss about how to prepare a stellar CV. So before going ahead into the topic, let's just learn what is the difference between a CV and the resume. So CV basically presents a full history of your academic credentials, so the length of the document is a variable. In contrast, a resume presents a concise or clear picture of your skills and qualifications for a specific role or a position. So the length tends to be a bit shorter than the CV and is dictated by years of experience. So the resume is generally around 1 to 2 pages. So CV is an essential document while applying for a college program or filing a visa. And CV gives the reviewer an idea of what your academics and achievements are and to see if you're a good fit to study abroad. So let's discuss the important things to keep in mind while preparing a CV to study abroad. So Shashi, what do you think is the first important thing in a CV?
Hi, thank you so much, Rohita, for a wonderful explanation. So that's the difference between CV and resume, and very well explained. Thank you so much for that. And I think the very first important aspect when it comes to putting it in a CV, especially for a student, is an academic background. I think it's very important to list all your academic background, right from your recent degree to your 12th, 10th standard, any certifications that you have done, and so on. CV, in fact, is your first impression that you create with the admission committee at the college or a university. So I think it's very, very important to list all so that they get an idea as to what you've done so far. So yeah, so that I think is important.
Right. And I also think one more important thing is to be clear and concise. So it is important to consider the length of the CV as mentioned earlier, and it becomes easy to talk about the course and qualifications in detail. But however, it is important that students keep it as short and concise as possible. And more than the length of your CV, what is important is your structure. So don't hold the most crucial information for the last. It is highly recommended that you mention all the critical information at the onset.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important to also check the language, I would say. Sometimes we write too technical, too much of a jargon, which might not be really necessary in a CV. So just as much as possible, avoid jargons and keep it very simple. Sometimes we use very frequent words such as I'm hardworking, I'm sincere, I'm studious. So it's kind of, cliche words that might not come across very well. So I think it's better to really avoid those things and keep it simple. I think that is very, very important. Yeah.
Right, I agree with that. And is it important that the student should mention the internship or work experience details?
Absolutely, Rohita. I think that's very important as well. So the admission committee is not just looking at the academic profile, but they also want to know where you work, the projects you have taken up, the internship that you have worked, and so on. And I don't know, for those of you who have been following our sessions, my colleagues last week discussed about extracurricular activities as well. So all those things needs to be included in your CV. I think it's very, very important to put it out there. And whatever you have done, I mean, even though you think it's like irrelevant, not very significant, don't worry about it. So put it out there so that the admission committee gets an idea as to what you have done. And it also throws light to them, like, which organization you have worked with and what is your role and so on. I think all these things will add on to your overall profile rather than just an academic score. Yeah, I think that's important. So Rohita, do you think, is there a particular format of CV that the students can follow? Is there any structure?
Yeah, I think the typical format of a CV should, you should start with your personal information, followed by your professional summary, and then work experience, which should be always mentioned in a reverse chronological order. So that means your
Okay.
latest work history should be at the top and the oldest should be at the end. And same goes with the education or academic details as well. So after the academic details, you can talk about your hobbies, your skills, and certifications as well. And even when you're putting your certifications, make sure you put the duration, start date, end date, etc. as well. So these are a couple of things, important things that should be included in a CV. And I heard that most of the students make very minute mistakes when it comes to preparing a CV. So what are a couple of things to keep in mind and avoid the mistakes according to you, Shashi?
Yeah, tell me about it. I've worked in the human resources field before, and I know, how important it is to give attention to these details. And, while you were talking about it, I was also thinking about the personal information. So most of us tend to put our own personal information, marital status, date of birth, passport number. So just try avoid all those kind of things, For an admission officer overseas, this might not be like really important information. Well, coming back to some of the common mistakes that we make in the CV, the very first thing that comes to my mind, Rohita, is grammatical error. So I think most of the time even though there is a spell check and everything, we probably, just oversee that. I think the typo and the grammatical errors have to be looked into. And despite all the advanced technology we have, we can still make mistakes. So I think it's better to get it reviewed by somebody, like, your maybe it could be a professor or peer, have somebody proofread your resume. And the other thing that, caught my attention is very small fonts. Sometimes just to squeeze the information, we might just try like 8 or 9 font size. And I think what is really important is to have a uniform font across your CV, as well as the font size is something that it is legible and readable. Say a font size of 11 would really work well, and keep it to a common font, which is like Arial or Times New Roman, rather than any fancy font that you might like, right? Sometimes you may not even be able to see that. That's one. And then again, margins. So I think it's very important, as I said, for the legitimate ones, to read it through. So you might want to have a good margin to your CV, and have some white spaces too. So what I mean by white spaces is have some gaps between lines. So don't let it be like, too cluttered. So that appearance is also important. And don't have flowery background. Like sometimes, we just try to decorate things. So avoid all those things because you're going for an academic profile. Keep it simple, and avoid using personal pronouns such as I, me, us, they, them. So they can't really relate to that. So as much as possible, avoid that. And I think it's very important to also avoid paragraphs until unless you're explaining a project and things which could add as an additional sheet. But your CV, let it be as simple as possible. So instead of paragraphs, you might want to just have bullet points. So that will just be easy for anybody to read it. And one of the very key things, Rohita, is to avoid unnecessary, irrelevant, and unwanted or outdated information, I would say. So again, what you did in your primary school, probably in 3rd or 4th standard, might not really matter well. Yeah, I was good at drawing. Okay, have you used the drawing right in your engineering, right? So try use only those skills, those kind of information that will be very relevant to the admission officer to make a decision. Remember, it's not just your academic documents, but also your CV that counts for the admission officer to make a decision, in addition to the recommendation letter and all the other things that we would need from the candidate. Hope this helps. I mean, of course, there are lots and lots of tips to look into it, but these are some of the primary things that comes to my mind.
Right. Thank you, Shashi. So, guys, these are some of the important things to keep in mind while preparing a CV. So, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we hope this information is useful and you find these sessions interesting. And if you want to know more about studying abroad, you can book a free counseling session with the link that is in our Instagram bio page. And the topic for the next week's live session is best cities to study in Canada. So we are looking forward to the next session at the same time, same day next week. Until then, goodbye. Happy weekend. Thank you, Shashi.
Thank you, Rohita. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining, and looking forward to see you all next week. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.